Welcome to the Digital Peloton News episode 4 for September 18th, 2018 here at Interbike in Reno. In today's episode, Kinetic announced a new direct drive smart trainer, Wahoo addressed the Kicker Core power overshoots with a firmware update, Australian-based pro team Mitchelton Scott win a Grand Tour, and I spot a few setup tips on Simon Yates' bike, and the women's hour record was broken by just 27 metres by Vittoria Bussi. I'll link you to some fascinating analysis of hour record attempts for those who love to nerd out on the data. This morning saw the announcement of the Kinetic R1 direct drive smart trainer. Kinetic are known for their road machines, their rock and roll, and a few smart trainers as well, wheel on. This is their first wheel off smart trainer. So we had a look at that unit today. Here's a first look, everything you need to know about the R1 trainer in under 60 seconds. First up, ANT+ FEC Bluetooth FTMS. We have max power of 2,000 watts, should be enough for all of us. Maximum 20% gradient simulation, 14-pound flywheel, power accuracy plus or minus 3%. But looking at getting that down to less than 3%, so keep an eye on this as the firmware progresses. Calibration and spin down is required, but there wasn't a lot of details around that. Probably not a big one for now. Again, we'll wait for the production units on this. Bike support, quick release out of the box, through axle support up to Boost 148 with all the adapters in the box as well. The R1 comes with a Shimano SRAM compatible cassette free hub. You will need to supply your own cassette, and camper users, you can get an adapter add-on for your grip set. So of course the unit itself does sway side to side, so an important part of that is having things nice and level as it's set up. This unit has 4 leveling points underneath it and folds up nice and tight. This is one of the very rare smart trainers that does support USB connectivity via a cable. Perf Pro is the only one supporting it at the moment, so if you're into that kind of thing, put the pressure on your software companies, they may just implement it, no more dropouts. The unit itself does require power. However, if you do use this off the grid and disconnect the power, you can set the resistance on it itself first, say from 1 to 10, for example. If you set that to 5, say half resistance, it'll stay there with the power disconnected. Kind of handy if you're used to taking your road machine or rock and roll out to a race, you want to take your new direct drive trainer along and get some resistance for your warm-ups. So there's the specs on the unit itself. I'll link below to Ray's article on this over at DC Rainmaker, who's just released it right now this second. So you get all the details over there, but a little bit more discussion on my take on the unit itself and the ride feel. Well, it does feel like a direct drive smart trainer. It has a nice flywheel feel to it. We didn't get to use Zwift or any software with it, but it wasn't a slog. It wasn't like pedaling in mud or pedaling a bag of sand, I think is my new rating of a trainer that doesn't feel too good. So definitely had the good kicker of the flywheel. The rock and rollness of it itself was very familiar to that of the rock and roll, their previous unit with wheel on. One of the things I think they do have right with this unit is the pivot point for the rock and roll motion. If you're using a rocker plate on any other trainer, the rocking motion is the entire system, which feels a bit unnatural. This one is pretty much where the wheel will rock, so that's been factored into the design. It doesn't feel too bad as you're moving along for those micro movements. Sprinting itself still feels a little bit awkward, but I wasn't clipped in, I was using my running shoes. So we'll wait for the full Lama lab test to give you a breakdown on that. The rocking motion on the unit is adjustable, so if you're a taller, bigger rider, you can really screw that down and not have it so squishy. Or if you're a lighter rider, you can really loosen those off and get the full range of motion, so it does count for different rider types. The noise itself, well, it doesn't really meet my 2018 standard of being silent. It's quiet, it has a hum to it, but it's not quite there in being able to use it in a library. So there's my initial preview of the R1 direct drive smart trainer from Kinetic. Again, hold tight, we'll give it a full Lama lab test very soon. And next up, and from our friends here at Wahoo, I have been informed that there are firmware updates coming for the Kicker Core to address that little power overshoot that we saw early on in both the Lama lab test and also Ray's review. So hold tight for that. It's coming very soon, and that was a super quick turnaround time from the issues that we did report and feedback to the team at Wahoo. Next up, and something I spotted over on Twitter that I think was quite interesting was, well, first of all, an Australian team has won a Grand Tour. So Mitchelton Scott, unbelievable work, good job by the team there. Simon Yates has his bike posted up here on Twitter before the final stage. I spotted a few interesting things that I'll take away, just little snippets from the bike used to win a Grand Tour just last week. So the bike here you can see uses the Shimano Dura-Ace power meter. We're using the Elite Fly bottles, my favorite bottles at the moment. It's also using a Garmin Edge 1030. And he has his sprint shifters installed down there on the hoods, but also the climbing shifter is almost inverted or spun around the other way. This is kind of genius. If you're climbing, they're usually there for your thumbs, but Simon has his over for the fingers. So as he's climbing up, wants one easier gear, one lower gear, it's all there at his fingertips. As mentioned there, the Garmin Edge 1030, which I've been rocking this week. It's been quite well, but he's also got the security strap. So, hey, even the pros look after their equipment. I think that's just on there for a bit of fun, so I'm not quite sure why the security strap is on there. Very interesting stuff though, but yeah, interesting front end setup and always things I'm looking to learn from and what I can have set up on the next bike that I'm looking for. And finally, the women's UCI track hour record has been broken this week by just 27 meters. So it's just over 48 kilometers. Now, 27 meters over 48 kilometers, the numbers on that are just so. I'll let Xavier Disley do the analysis on that one, and I have. Check out Xavier's work on this. Every single hour record attempt, Xavier grabs the numbers, crunches it, and posts up this really easy to look at graph, and I just nerd out on this kind of stuff. It's a really good look and insight into what it takes to win an hour record, what it takes to fail at an hour record, and something happens around the 40-minute mark or so for nearly every rider. It's a really interesting deflection point. I'd love to have a chat to a coach about exactly what happens at about 40 minutes. Again, I'll link below to Xavier's stuff. Again, check out the graphs and a bit of insight on the hour records and nerd out on that. Okay, we'll leave it there today. Just short and sharp. There's a lot more to come from Interbike. Stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe below. And again, all the links are there too.